Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We have good, bad, and either bad or crazy or both in the third martini. We'll leave it up to you, but let's start with our good martini. And this one's got multiple facets to it, but let's start with this part first. It's January 22nd? It's been roughly 48 hours since Donald Trump has been sworn in. And according to Border Czar Tom Homan, there's already very marked results when it comes to illegal crossings at our southern border.
Because in 2 days, the last 24 hours, total apprehensions on the southwest border, 766. Compare that to the 10 to 12,000 Biden had at one time. CBP-1 releases, 0. CHNV, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela releases, 0. Total of 766 across the entire southwest border. That is a game changer.
It's definitely a game changer. Now, those 10 to 12,000 a day, those were kind of peak Biden numbers, which got up to about 300,000 in a month. Ever since he signed those executive orders about a year ago that he said he couldn't, things have gotten much better. He had reversed a bunch of Trump executive orders. Then when his political fortune started to dip, he put him back in place. And magically, things got a little bit tougher at the border, but nothing like 766 per day. So, Jim, not only that, we're moving forward with the ICE removals of criminal illegals. And as you flagged for us here in Denver, the Democratic mayor there, Mike Johnston, not that long ago, had compared resisting government efforts to remove criminal illegals to Tiananmen Square, saying more than us having Denver police stationed at the county line to keep them out, you would have 50,000 Denverites here. It's like the Tiananmen Square moment with the rose and the gun, right? No, it would not be. But anyway, he now says, now that it's actually happening, he's going to cooperate.
Democratic Governor Jared Polis says that he welcomes the Trump administration's assistance in removing people from our community who are here illegally and have committed crimes. Do you also welcome that help?
Yeah, we will partner on violent criminals as we have always done. In the past, the last administration, we will do it again. We don't want criminals of any background on our streets, and that's been clear for us consistently.
Now, as Homan has made it clear in previous interviews, Jim, the local authorities don't have to cooperate, but it is a crime for them to resist. And so the Justice Department, even before Pam Bondi gets on the job, saying there will be investigations of any jurisdiction who actually interferes with the effort to remove criminal aliens. So we're just getting started, and there's even a couple of more bullet points to get to in just a second. But what do you make of what we're already seeing here?
Sure. Well, regarding Homan's comment, I could see people kind of saying, oh, come on, they've only been on the job for a day, and would you really be seeing results this fast? Back in 2017, there was the sudden drop when Trump got into power after being at a fairly high level during the Obama years. Because a lot of people in Central America and Mexico and coming from other places kind of wanted to see what enforcement was like. And then it kind of gradually started inching up month by month. But in January 2017, there were a lot of much fewer people who wanted to attempt to cross the U.S. border illegally, in part because, Trump had talked about this as so vehemently and so furiously on the campaign trail back in 2016, and was promising to build the big, beautiful wall and all that stuff. I suspect we're seeing something similar, and I think all of the action you're seeing both on the border and enforcement at home or throughout the country, that's probably having a deterrent effect. That if you didn't get here by January 20th, 2025, you're probably SOL. You probably do not want to try to attempt to cross now. Listeners can't see Greg saying so thrilled that I use that particular acronym. On the second item, I just want to emphasize this is Mike Johnston with a T, yes. Not Mike Johnson. The Speaker of the House is totally on board with all this. Mike Johnson's a good guy. Mike Johnston, the mayor of Denver, has had a sudden recent change of heart, it would seem. No. So on the first one, the Tiananmen Square comments, I traditionally like to have all members of U.S. law enforcement at all levels on the same side and pointing their guns in the same direction instead of this quasi-civil war scenario that he described. I think within a couple hours, 24 hours, he was starting to inch back away from that position. And I think that's I'm glad to see his insistence that Denver will always cooperate with detaining and turning over violent criminals. And ultimately, look, we're about to see a massive mobilization of federal resources in immigration enforcement. And as we talked before, the country wants to see the drug dealers, the gang members, the dangerous criminals deported. Homan has talked about how there's no shortage of people who have criminal records who already have deportation orders. There's no further need for hearings. There's no further adjudication needed. It's just a matter of finding these people and sending them back to their home countries, which I think a broad majority, I think the New York Times poll had something like 89% saying they fully applauded that and wanted to see it happen. If you start deporting Manuel the busboy at your local Mexican restaurant, they might feel differently about that. I think that my guess is the Trump administration is going to focus its resources on the illegal immigrants in this country who represent the greatest threat to the citizens. So that's great to hear. And as much as it might seem like, oh, it's too early to see effects, based on history, we shouldn't be terribly shocked to see a sudden drop in interest in attempting to sneak across the border.
Yeah, one would hope so. And yes, they are prioritizing the removal of criminal illegals. But in his interview with Dana Bash the other day on CNN, I think she was kind of hyperventilating at home and saying, we're not just going to do that. There's millions and millions of people who came to this country illegally and they don't get to stay. But first priorities first, and the criminals would certainly be that. A couple of other things is just, these big cities, they still went blue, Chicago, New York. But if you look at the margins, the percentages, much narrower than in years past. One of the reasons why Illinois was a single-digit win for Kamala Harris. And New York was, I think, right around 10 or 11 points, but not as much as it had been in previous elections. And it's because these big cities, you got tons of people just fed up with these policies where this is disrupting so many different aspects of their daily life here. But other aspects that we're seeing here, first of all, Trump kicked out one of the leaders of the Coast Guard, fired her, and also new Coast Guard policies. Bill Malushin from Fox News reporting that in response to Trump executive orders, the Coast Guard will immediately surge boats, cutters, aircraft, and specialized forces to the southeast border around Florida to prevent mass illegal immigration from Haiti and Cuba, and will also surge resources to the maritime border around Alaska, Hawaii, territories out in the Pacific, maritime border between the Bahamas and South Florida, the southwest maritime border between the U.S. and Mexico in the Pacific, and the maritime border between Texas and Mexico in the Gulf of America, Jim. So that is now the official
Gulf
statement.
of where again? Is that body of water between Texas and Florida? Okay, just checking.
Your atlases are going to get a little more expensive because they're going to reprint them or something. But
that's the frigid Gulf of America, let's point out, for everybody
Yes.
who's getting snow in New Orleans, Tallahassee. I heard Pensacola got 8 inches. So, yeah.
Yeah, panhandle of Florida, not used to getting that stuff, or the Big Easy. And then also last note on immigration for today is that the Senate has officially passed the Laken Riley Act 64-35, 12 Democrats joining all the Republicans on that. They did amend it a bit. So the House has to pass it again, but I don't think they're going to have a problem with it because the two amendments seem to actually make it stronger. The original bill said that ICE can take custody of and deport illegals who are arrested or convicted for committing acts of burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting. The new amendments also include assault of a law enforcement officer and also any acts that cause death or bodily harm. So, Jim, I imagine it's just a matter of one vote in the House, and I think we're good here.
Now that this thing is all but certain to be signed into law by Trump in the very near future, you almost wonder if more House Democrats will want to vote for it now. This thing's becoming law, so you might as well jump on the bandwagon, right? Why give the NRCC more fodder for attack ads unless your district is resolutely opposed to this and is a really big fan of violent crime committed by illegal immigrants? And I can't imagine there are that many people in America who feel that way.
The Democratic argument is that you can be deported just for being arrested. They want you to have to be convicted, but you're already here illegally. So,
you're in the country illegally. It's so unfair. You got deported for something you didn't do. Yeah, but you still snuck into the country against the law.
All right, well, let's talk about how 2025 is going for you so far. For the first 48 hours for Republicans, it's going pretty darn well. But what do you want your story to be for this year? Where do you want to be on December 31st, 2025? Whether it's family relationships, other relationships, your work, or just your general outlook on life and where things are headed. Well, if what you've been doing so far isn't working, maybe it's time to talk to someone who can help you a little bit more. And that's where BetterHelp comes in, because you don't want to give up on the resolutions. You don't want to give up on those dreams. So let BetterHelp guide you along.
BetterHelp is fully online. It makes therapy affordable and convenient and serves more than 5 million people around the world. You can access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. And you can easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost.
So write your own story with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/3ML to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/3ML. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now and back to the Biden pardons. We've talked largely about Biden, but we're going to talk about one of these pardons in particular that came out on his final day in office, and it was the first batch that day of the preemptive pardons, and specifically Dr. Anthony Fauci, former big shot over at the National Institutes of Health. And so the Spectator has taken a close look at this, Matt Ridley being the author over there. And again, it's curious about the timing of the pardon. There's a certain window of time that he can't be prosecuted for any nonviolent offense. And it's the beginning of 2014, which is a long time before COVID. So Ridley looked into this and said, the significance of 2014 is that this is when the Obama administration responded to anxiety among some scientists about a series of experiments that made influenza viruses potentially more dangerous to people by banning federal funding for any such gain-of-function experiments. Yet, from 2014, money flowed from Fauci's National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases to support experiments which led to gain-of-function in Wuhan, in China, via an organization called the EcoHealth Alliance. There, SARS-like viruses gained the function in certain experiments of becoming 10,000 times more infectious in humanized mice. Both the NIH and EcoHealth Alliance have denied any wrongdoing. And so, Jim, I mean, this goes back to some of the questioning I think Rand Paul and others have grilled Anthony Fauci about. But basically, the allegation here is that, the Obama administration shut this down. Fauci didn't want to give up on it. And so he was basically funneling money earmarked for other stuff to keep this going, and potentially led to, quite likely, in fact, led to this massive outbreak that disrupted the world for more than a year.
Greg, I am willing to believe some of the effusive praise for Anthony Fauci and how everyone testified about what a terrific doctor he was, about a terrific leader he was, right up until the moment his face started appearing on prayer candles. And then I think once you get elevated to that, like, I listeners to the podcast know that I have a very irreverent sense of humor. But that's one of the few things in life I find genuinely blasphemous, and do not believe, if you're I don't care how terrific a guy you are, you probably should not have your face on a prayer candle. And the cult of celebrity that grew up around Fauci in the early months of the pandemic was not good for him. Several times he had said something about, these people are questioning the science. I am the science. Really reminded me of Judge Dredd's I am the law, to give you my long-retired Sylvester Stallone impression. I just think that level of media hosannas puts someone in a sense where they really do start to believe their own press releases and start to think of themselves as above criticism. So when called before Congress, you could almost see the indignation in Fauci and how, who these guys, you don't understand the science. And he, said to Rand Paul, we did not fund gain-of-function research. It really got into this very Clintonian, well, it depends on how you define gain-of-function research. And when everybody involved in it is saying, well, we have these viruses and they're gaining functions, then people start to think, oh, that certainly sounds like gain-of-function research. The data, you think, well, if you don't want anybody, the Trump Department of Justice going after Fauci for stuff related to the pandemic, you'd think the pardon would go back to 2019 or so. It was called COVID-19. But obviously this goes back to 2014. So what did he do in those 5 years before the pandemic that Joe Biden is worried about Fauci getting prosecuted about? Well, it probably relates to these decisions made to continue the research going on at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Greg, we've talked about the potential likely origin of the pandemic. God, probably it feels like a million times, like dozens of times on this podcast. You and I have been doing this for a long time. In fact, long enough, so long we actually began right before this pardon started. Right? I did extensive reporting on the lab leak theory. I put it in the case. I'm probably in the high 90-some% convinced that it came from a lab. Laid it all out plenty of times, and I kind of just came to the conclusion. As soon as the U.S. intelligence community came back with we don't know, boss, report early in the Biden administration. And to the best of my knowledge, Joe Biden did never refer to the inquiry or the question of where COVID-19 came from ever again for the remainder of his presidency. I concluded, China got away with it, that we were never going to get, we have strong suspicions. We have a mountain of circumstantial evidence, but that the U.S. government had largely dropped its interest in this issue because it was going to be so disruptive to U.S.-China relations, and because there were some embarrassing, it's not like Anthony Fauci knew that this was going to cause a worldwide global pandemic that was going to kill at minimum 7 people. You throw in all the sudden surges in pneumonia deaths in places like Russia and China, you end up with closer to 25 million people killed around the world. It was just too embarrassing for the U.S. scientific community that they had accidentally, probably recklessly, probably ignoring the level of risk, gone along with experiments that got loose and ended up killing 25 million people. Now I'm not so sure. Maybe we are going to have some sort of this, because now, even with this pardon, if the Senate calls Fauci in there, he's got to testify. He cannot invoke a Fifth Amendment, right against self-incrimination because he's been pardoned. There's no longer any legal risk to him. So we will see if that happens. It certainly sounds like Rand Paul feels like a pit bull, a dog with a bone, and he's not, he's clamped down his jaws and he's not going to let this go. So this is that's the silver lining to what is otherwise a very bad martini. It is also a demonstration of Biden's judgment that he believes that Fauci should be legally immune for any decisions he made regarding gain-of-function research over in Wuhan that led to this pandemic, which I think a lot of Americans would, no matter how well they thought of Fauci, during the pandemic or before the pandemic, don't believe that he should get a get out of jail free card for all of that.
Biden should be as angry as anyone. I mean, he was part of the Obama administration, which told them not to do this anymore. And then he shuffled the money around. Fungible is the word people like to use. It's, given to you for this purpose. We're going to use it over here instead. And if that's, in fact, what ultimately led to the calamity that disrupted everything, and as you said, killed millions and millions of people have a right to be mad about that. And we need more and more answers. Even if we can't necessarily prosecute, we need to know the truth, and hopefully we'll get closer to it. All right, Jim, on to our final martini now. And Donald Trump is still playing footsie with federal law when it comes to TikTok. The official ban without a proper sale and divestiture from the CCP-backed business which runs it, ByteDance, supposed to go into effect the day before the inauguration. I don't know who set that date in the legislation, but it didn't seem to be super bright. But Biden wouldn't enforce it. Trump won't enforce it. He's sure that a deal can be made super soon, and he's planning, apparently, to negotiate this. And so yesterday he's at the White House announcing this $500 billion AI infrastructure deal with Larry Ellison from Oracle and 2 other high-tech giants, and talking about how they want America to be at the pinnacle of this. And I think that would be good, both for putting some safeguards there and for us, being the leaders in this technology, which is going to be huge soon. But in the Q&A part of this, there were a handful of reporters there at the rope line where this press conference was happening. Star former Radio America intern and now Daily Caller White House correspondent Reagan Reese with the question, hey, do you want Elon to buy TikTok? Which led to this whole sequence.
Are you open to Elon buying TikTok? Are you open to Elon buying TikTok?
I would be if he wanted to buy it.
Have you discussed it with Larry Ellison?
I'd like Larry to buy it too. I have the right to make a deal. So the deal I'm thinking about, Larry, let's negotiate in front of the media. The deal, I think, is this, and I've met with owners of TikTok, the big owners. It's worthless if it doesn't get a permit. It's not like, you can take the U.S. The whole thing is worthless. With a permit, it's worth like $1 trillion. So what I'm thinking about saying to somebody is buy it and give half to the United States of America, half, and we'll give you the permit. And they'll have a great partner, the United States. And they'll have something that's actually more valuable because they have the ultimate partner, and the United States will make it very worthwhile for them in terms of the permits and everything else.
So, Jim, obviously we want to get it out of the hands of the CCP as soon as possible, if TikTok is going to even exist at all going forward. Now, we obviously need clarity. Sometimes this is an issue with Trump about what he means by the United States of America controlling half of this. If he means the federal government controlling or having at least a 50% share in a free speech platform, I do not like that because depending on who's running the federal government, that could be a major, major thumb on the scale. So what do you make of the fact that he's still not enforcing the law, and then also that he's got this potentially in mind, although I'm guessing he might have just been spitballing in the moment there, but we'll see.
This is all nonsensical regarding the possibility of a sale. Today's Morning Jolt is all about U.S.-Japanese relations. Last night, the Japanese Foreign Ministry invited a small group of reporters, including myself, to a briefing about their foreign minister meeting with the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. And the topic of TikTok came up. And someone said, is there a potential Japanese buyer for TikTok? And the press, these are two gentlemen from the foreign ministry, like, is it for sale? With a certain amount of excitement. Like, wait, did they say they're going to sell it? There's never been a shortage of people who are interested in buying. Everyone sees the value of it. ByteDance, which is a Chinese company, which is effectively an arm of the Chinese Communist Party, doesn't want to sell. Everybody knows we've been requiring them to sell for years now. They do not want to sell. And Trump is right on the verge. All I was waiting, his entire monologue there would have made a lot more sense where if he said, if they're not willing to sell, well, then we know what it's really there for. The fact that they have refused to sell for the entirety of the period set by the U.S. government indicates the purpose of TikTok is espionage. The purpose is to A, suck all the data out of your phone. So they've got all kinds, including your keystrokes, down to that. Never mind your numbers, your contacts, location, all that kind of stuff. And then the second thing is that it's there for propaganda purposes. Do you think it was just crazy spontaneous that a bunch of teenagers who know nothing about the Middle East suddenly decided in October 2023 that Hamas were the good guys and that Israel was bad? You think when the old Bin Laden statement went viral and all these young people are like, wow, Bin Laden makes a lot of really good points. You think that just happened? No, this happened because the algorithm of TikTok is designed to send out these negative messages and to stir up divisions in American society. And remember, TikTok is banned in China. They have a Chinese equivalent. And you know what it tells you? Educational videos. Science experiments, how to become smarter. In other words, the Chinese version of TikTok is designed to improve the lives of their citizens. And oh, by the way, it's limited during certain hours. You can't access it during school hours over in China. What does that tell you? That our version of TikTok is full of crazy conspiracy theories and garbage, and as what's described as a strip club full of 15-year-olds and all kinds of foreign propaganda, right? We have more than enough reasons for that to ban it. The U.S. government said, you either sell it or we ban it. More than a year ago, passed the House by a wide bipartisan margin, passed the Senate by a wide bipartisan margin. Biden signed it into law. TikTok challenged the Supreme Court. Supreme Court unanimously said there's no First Amendment issue. Everything in this U.S. law is perfectly hunky-dory. And then Trump goes into office. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to give him another 90 days. Now, people are like, well, doesn't the law allow that? The law allows it if there was a deal in place and you basically needed to dot the I's and cross the T's. There is no deal in place. That's why Trump is speculating. Elon, do you want it? Larry Ellison, do you want it? As I mentioned, there's no shortage of buyers. The issue is that China doesn't want to sell it because they want to keep it in place because it's an espionage and propaganda tool. And I don't know if Trump is in denial about this because he feels like it helped him with the young people in the 2024 election, or because he just thinks someday, at some point, they're going to relent at the 11th hour and agree to sell it. Either way, the law is passed. There is no window, and you cannot say, I, through executive order, am overruling this act of Congress that my predecessor signed into law and the Supreme Court has upheld as legal. You really can't do it 24 hours after you've taken a pledge to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, which is what Trump did Monday.
The national security of this country and the privacy of the American people is more important than the fact that TikTok probably helped you do a little better among the youth vote in 2024 than in a previous election cycle. So until you've got a deal, I have to take the position of the electrical worker at Nakatomi Plaza. Shut it down. Shut it down now.
Indeed. Well said.
Jim, have a great Wednesday. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. By the way, listeners, stay tuned because you're going to see how many consecutive days we can work in a reference to Die Hard. I think we're at least at 2 or 3, right? So, keep listening. Pay close attention.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to our podcast if you don't already, and please tell your friends to do so as well. We'd love to have them listening. Also, thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Wednesday. Join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.